Welcome back, America. You may not know it, but this week marked the 50th anniversary of punk rock. I wouldn't have known it except for my guest, Eli Lake, and his fabulous podcast, Breaking History, available at the Free Press and wherever podcasts are available. Eli, you would never have gotten me to listen, even though I love your podcast. I think Breaking History is fabulous. You would never have gotten me to listen to a history of punk rock until you threw in Socrates. So
Yes.
one, great hook. Two, great production values from Clint Eastwood to The Birds by Sophocles from what 19th. Tell people what you're up to.
Well, I wanted to do something that has kind of been on my mind since I was a philosophy major in college, which is that I always thought that the Socrates, particularly of the Apology, which is the account of his trial, sentencing, and death, that I just thought it was that he was the first punk. He was like that, and I define it as the combination of defiance of kind of the cultural norms, the idea of creative destruction. The brilliant concept of Joseph Schumpeter, the economist, talks about the idea that in capitalist free market cultures, societies, as you know, sometimes you need to have sort of the destruction of old industries to build better ones. The classic being the horseshoe versus the automobile. The corruption of youth, which was one of the two charges against Socrates in his trial, and the death wish, which is always sort of the negative side of punk, where you see so many of the first generation and other generations of punks like Kurt Cobain, you could sort of say, who ended their lives early because of drug addiction or taking their own lives, the kind of danger of it. All of that is there, I think, in the final days of Socrates, particularly, his approach to, he scolds his companions and students who are weeping as he drinks the hemlock that he knows is going to kill him. So I always wanted to sort of make that argument, and I did. There were some philosophy professors who politely told me that there are many interpretations of the of the Apology. I agree. I made it very clear this is the Eli Lake interpretation. This has been, as it should be, debated, for millennia. But I think that there is something there as somebody who likes punk music. And I thought that, what is the original punk? And what, I could see, I think so I see like the kind of punk-like characters throughout history.
Well, there's
Socrates
an arc
was
of punk. I love the way that you managed to bring together the original Scottish term, the fact that Shakespeare uses it, the fact that we have Clint Eastwood saying, do you feel lucky, punk? Right. It's got so many different terms, but then punk rock comes along. The one thing that was discordant with me, Eli, is whoever it was, I can't remember, said, nobody told us heroin was bad. Really? Nobody told you heroin was bad in 1974?
That was from a great memoir called Punk Avenue by Phil Marchetti, who was like part of that scene, was in a lesser band. I thought that was a very good point. Yeah, like nobody told us it was going to kill us or something like that. But there was a sense, I think, that of kind of, especially when you're young, that nothing will kill you, that you're indestructible, that you don't trust the rules of society. And my point that I tried to make at the end was you need a little bit of punk so that we don't stagnate. But too much punk is anarchy and nihilism. And I just think that that's the conservative, that's why I call myself on the center right, because it's ultimately the insight that it's like everything within reason, within moderation, to a point. And I think for those of us who are on American conservatives, we are conserving in some ways a revolutionary tradition in the Founding Fathers and the Declaration of Independence.
I agree with that. I also want to ask you a big question. I had
Yes.
You do a history podcast. You love history. It's a great podcast, Breaking History. I had Haviv Reddy Gur on yesterday for 70
That
minutes.
was brilliant. I want to say that.
Well, he's
conversation
brilliant.
But I mean, I just loved it. It was so good.
Well,
I usually listen to things on like 1.5 speed. I listened to that. I had to listen to every word at 1.0.
We got to reproduce him and put him everywhere. But at the end, he said there is this hunger for history, this very great, and his mission is to teach English-speaking Jews their history. How did that hit your ears?
Well, first of all, I consider him. I mean, he teaches me things I don't know, so he's doing it with me. I'm an American Jew, and I think that is an important lesson. But I would say I would widen the aperture. I think there are a lot of things Americans can learn from Haviv Reddy Gur, not just about the history of Israel and the Middle East, but I think he is such a careful kind of student of the great monotheistic faiths, and I think that there's an element of his work that can be valuable there. And there's so much misinformation, as you know, about the Middle East and the conflict. So I would say not just American Jews. I'd say he's a great kind of teacher for Americans, and it's so great that you have these like long, in-depth conversations. They're wonderful.
Well, I now have got, I try and GPS for the non-Jewish audience and the Israeli audience who are listening because it's Aviv, who they are. I think he's Krauthammer, and I think Amit Segal is kind of a combination of Brit Hume and Matt Continetti, and I think Nadav Eyal is Dan Balls. What do you make of my GPSing?
I kind of like that. I mean, Krauthammer is the highest praise as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
I grew up on Krauthammer. I grew up on listening to Rush. I grew up on Krauthammer and George Will and Buckley. I mean, those are the big ones as far as I see it, that helped kind of shape where I was coming from. Yeah.
But you're kind of engaged in the same project, which is make history fun. There's no reason we have to have stupid people. I mean, I look at 78% of the kids 18 to 30 voting for Mamdani. I look at the University of Washington having 50,000 students, and they just elected another municipal Marxist. That's bad education, Eli. It's Howard Zinn education. It doesn't work.
Well, it's also, though, I mean, you think about it, we have a generation of people who are so-called, I think Mamdani's base are the educated, downwardly mobile. I don't think he's speaking for the working class. I actually think the working class in New York are smarter than the kids who have multiple degrees from elite institutions who voted for Mamdani. And the problem is, what are they learning in those institutions? Because I think that what they're looking at, they're saying, wait a second, my women's studies degree has not gotten me enough economic security to own my own home and to start a family. That, I think, is a sort of deeper issue. And that really does go back to the universities. And I'm not saying you can't teach some of the authors that they like. You teach everything. But I think it's been at the exclusion of that kind of Western canon. And as you know, we've been having this argument now for like 30, 40 years. And
Alan Bloom started it. Yep.
Absolutely. Alan Bloom started it. Closing of the American Mind, which is such an important book. But that's why, you don't have to be an expert on it. I'm not an expert on Plato, but there's so much you can get from it. And if there is a way to kind of maybe light the spark and have people kind of going back to these great texts, that's our inheritance here in the West.
Well, you are, though, an expert at producing a fabulous podcast. And I don't know how many production hours goes into that, but this was a lot of elements, a lot of good quick cuts, and my hat is off to you. If you have not yet tried Breaking History, this is an iconoclastic edition of Breaking History, but you'll love it. Head over for the 50-year mark of the debut of punk rock with the Sex Pistols and the Ramones. Not too much of that, but a lot of Socrates. You'll really like it. Eli Lake can be followed at Eli Lake on X and at the Free Press and at Breaking History.